Joining me now is California Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia. Congressman Garcia, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So last time you joined us on this program, you called Tom Homan's comments that the administration would pursue mass deportation with or without Democrats shameful. Now he's actually gone a step further. We just heard him there suggest he would prosecute, take actions against governors or mayors who don't cooperate. What was your reaction to hearing that?
I mean, again, just completely un-American comments. I've been in Congress in my first term. I'm a freshman. I was mayor of my city for 8 years before I got to Congress, and I can tell you that mayors want to see their police officers focus on the things that matter on the ground. And that is ensuring that there's traffic tickets being given out, that when people call 911, someone's there to help. No one is interested, including, by the way, most major city chiefs that have spoken out, in being somehow these immigration force polices across the country. Police officers have actual work to do in these cities, and their job is not to enforce immigration law, let alone their job is certainly not to be some sort of police force for Donald Trump. And so that is just not realistic and not going to happen. And in fact, will make the country less safe. And in addition, as an immigrant myself, one of the few in Congress that for part of my life was not documented, it is very clear to me that this is someone that wants to attack people like my family and like my community, and we've got to be vocal and stand up against it.
Let me ask you about something else that we heard from President-elect Trump. I had my one-on-one sit-down with him, which aired last week. In it, he seemed to suggest that he does want to find a path for dreamers. An immigration advocate made this a call to action, was here on this program yesterday. Let me play you a little bit of my conversation and get your reaction on the other side.
I think we need to really come together and hold the president accountable and say, we want to work with you. It's been 23 years, as I said. We've seen bipartisan DREAM Acts. We've seen legislation come from Republicans, like Succeed Act. We've seen the Dream and Promise Act. There's 12 different types of legislation. And so I think we've already done this exercise. I think we just have to be ready and prepare. That is exactly why I made this video. I'm hoping that President Trump sees it and sees there's willingness from folks to work with him and are ready to applaud him if he's able to get this done.
That is Gabby Pacheco. She's a dreamer who is now here with legal status. Do you agree with her? Do you want this to be a moment? Do you think it can be a moment where you can get something done by working with President-elect Trump?
Well, I mean, first, obviously, everybody would love to see some type of immigration reform or protection for dreamers. There is no question. But I am not holding my breath. Donald Trump will say one thing and do another. He'll come out with a proposal and they do a complete flip on it. We've seen already how he speaks of immigrants and folks within our community. In one breath, he wants to help dreamers, and in another, he wants to deport their parents and separate families, and then actually not even think about issues as far as families that have mixed status in their homes. So I have a hard time believing that Donald Trump wants to do anything productive with immigration. But look, if Republicans, if Donald Trump, if anyone actually wants to pass meaningful reform, which we have not had in decades in this country, I'll be the first one in line. Democrats will be the first one in line. I just don't see it happening.
So, and I hear your skepticism, but just to be very clear, you are saying you're willing to work with President-elect Donald Trump once he's in office if you think that he is being serious about getting a deal on dreamers.
If Donald Trump is serious about getting a deal on dreamers and ensuring there's a pathway for them to be here in a way that's legal and protective, absolutely. I don't think there's a Democrat in Congress that wouldn't want to see protection for dreamers. But again, we can't trust anything he has to say, so we'll wait and see. But again, I'm not optimistic.
Given that Democrats are in the minority, do you feel like you have any leverage on this issue or, frankly, any other issue at this point?
Look, one thing I learned as a freshman member of Congress is that even in the minority, you can stop a lot of bad things from happening in the House. And I think that under the leadership of Hakeem Jeffries and others, we were able to stop a lot of bad legislation, a lot of bad budget deals. And that was because, of course, as we know, that majority was slim. It is even more slim in this Congress. And so I do believe that by speaking out, by being tough, by negotiating tough, by not just collapsing into whatever Donald Trump and Republicans want, I think we do have an ability to push back. And I've encouraged my colleagues as well. We have to also be tough and fight back. I'm hearing from folks back home. They want us to stand up for our values as Democrats and to push back, especially when you have folks like Elon Musk trying to essentially destroy the federal government. So it's important that we're loud and active.
Well, let me ask you about another aspect of what we heard from President-elect Trump, comments that he made about jailing members of the January 6th committee. NBC News has reported that President Biden's actually now considering preemptive pardons for people targeted by Mr. Trump, folks like Senator Adam Schiff, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, maybe even Anthony Fauci. Do you think that President Biden should issue those preemptive pardons, and should they be accepted?
So I think that we should expect Donald Trump to be as vindictive as he always has been. Look at who he's putting in charge of the FBI or wants to. Look, I support President Biden making a wide use of his pardon power, his power to commute sentences. I think that obviously he just did that in a way that was historic and substantial. I think he should continue to do that, particularly those that are facing death row in the federal system. But as far as protecting members that could be vulnerable to the FBI and their attacks and being weaponized, I absolutely would support that. I think the president and his advisors, from what I understand in my conversations, are actively looking at this day to day. And so I think we're going to hear a lot more about pardons and commutations here in the days ahead as we close the Biden presidency.
Okay, well, that was a little bit of news there that you think this could come in the days ahead. Let me, before I let you go, ask you about some of the battles that we're seeing starting to brew already between younger members of the Democratic caucus who are challenging some of their more senior colleagues for key committee positions. Do you think it's time for a new generation to step in? Does seniority matter at all, Congressman? What do you make of this?
Look, I think you can do both. I think, look, seniority is important because you have experience, you have folks that have relationships and know how to be in the system. But people that are coming in, young folks, fresh perspectives, new ideas, is also very important. So the party should welcome both. And I believe that in our ranks, in committee chairs and leadership, you should have a mix of people with experience and people that are coming in with fresh new ideas. I don't believe that a seniority-only approach is the best approach for our caucus, and I think you're seeing that play out. I mean, look at Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries is, in Congress years, a relatively newer member, and he is leading our caucus. He's bringing a fresh perspective, and I think folks are coming in and wanting to serve as committee chairs or the leadership roles. I just got elected to leadership myself as an incoming sophomore. I think it's good to have those different perspectives, and I support it. I think it's good for the party.
All right. Congressman Robert Garcia, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.